The scream that tore from Willa Warren's throat on that frozen December night in 1882 would haunt the small mining town of Rawhide, Nevada, for years to come. But none would remember it as clearly as the cowboy who heard it from across the street. Nathan Everett had been leading his horse toward the boarding house when the sound split the air like lightning, followed by the acrid smell of burning flesh that made his stomach turn, and his boots pivot toward the ramshackle house at the edge of town before his mind could catch up to his body. He kicked the door open without thinking, his hand instinctively moving to the revolver at his hip, but what he saw made him freeze for just a heartbeat. A girl of perhaps 19 lay face down on the wooden floor, her dress torn open at the back, revealing angry red burns that still smoked in the cold air. Standing over her with a fireplace poker glowing orange at the tip was a man Nathan recognized as Frank Warren, the girl's stepfather, a mean drunk who worked occasionally at the silver mine when he was sober enough to stand. "Get out of my house," Frank snarled, swaying on his feet, the poker still clutched in his meaty fist. "This is family business." Nathan's jaw clenched so tight he thought his teeth might crack. "Put the poker down. I said get out." Frank lunged forward, swinging the poker in a wide arc, but whiskey had made him slow and clumsy. Nathan sidestepped easily, grabbed the man's wrist, and twisted until Frank howled and dropped the weapon. Without hesitation, Nathan's fist connected with Frank's jaw, sending him sprawling backward into the wall where he slumped unconscious. The girl whimpered, trying to push herself up but collapsing back down. Nathan knelt beside her, his hands hovering uselessly over her ruined back, afraid to touch her and cause more pain. "Easy now," he said softly, his voice surprisingly gentle for a man who had just knocked another man cold. "I am going to help you." "Please," she gasped, tears streaming down her pale cheeks. "Please just let me die." "Not a chance, miss." Nathan shrugged out of his heavy coat and laid it carefully over her shoulders, avoiding the burns as best he could. "Can you stand if I help you?" She shook her head, her body trembling violently. Nathan made a decision then that would change both their lives forever. He scooped her up as carefully as if she were made of glass, feeling her stiffen and bite back another scream as the movement jarred her injuries. "I have got you," he murmured. "I have got you." He carried her out into the bitter December wind, past his startled horse, and down the dark street toward the only place he could think of that was his own. Nathan had been living in a small cabin at the far end of town, a place he had won in a poker game 3 months prior. It was not much, but it was clean and warm, and most importantly, it was away from Frank Warren. The wind howled around them as Nathan kicked open his cabin door and carried Willa inside. He laid her carefully on his bed, face down, and quickly stoked the fire in the stone fireplace until warm light filled the small space. His hands shook slightly as he lit the oil lamps, not from cold but from the rage still coursing through his veins, and something else, something that made his chest tight when he looked at her small form curled on his bed. "I need to clean the burns," he said, forcing his voice to remain calm. "It is going to hurt." Willa turned her head to look at him with eyes the color of storm clouds, wide with pain and fear, but also something that might have been hope. "Who are you?" "Nathan Everett. I work at the Taylor Ranch north of town." He moved to his small kitchen area and began pumping water into a basin, then set it near the fire to take the chill off. From his saddlebag, he retrieved a small tin of salve his mother had taught him to make years ago, before she passed. Comfrey and calendula mixed with beeswax and lavender oil. He had always kept some on hand for rope burns and saddle sores. "I am Willa," she whispered. "Willa Warren, though I hate that name now." Nathan brought the basin and some clean cloths to the bedside, pulling up a chair. "May I?" he asked, gesturing to her back. She nodded, burying her face in his pillow. Nathan took a deep breath and carefully peeled away what remained of her dress from the burns. His jaw clenched at what he saw. 3 distinct burn marks ran across her shoulder blades and upper back, deep and angry. Frank had held that poker against her skin with intention, with cruelty that Nathan could barely comprehend. Why did he do this? Nathan asked quietly as he began to gently clean the wounds with the warm water, working as carefully as his calloused hands would allow. Willa was silent for so long he thought she would not answer. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, "I refused to marry his friend, a man twice my age who Frank owed money to. He said I was ungrateful, that I owed him for taking me in after my mother died 2 years ago." When I said no again tonight, he grabbed the poker from the fire. Nathan's hand stilled. "You do not owe him anything, you hear me? Not a damn thing." Something in his fierce tone made Willa's shoulders relax slightly despite the pain. "You should not have gotten involved. Frank has friends. He will come looking for me. Let him come." Nathan resumed his gentle cleaning, then began to apply the salve with feather-light touches. "He will have to go through me first." Over the next few days, Nathan learned that caring for Willa's burns required constant attention. He had sent word to the ranch that he would not be in for a while, citing a family emergency. His foreman, a good man named Jim Taylor who owned the ranch himself, had sent back supplies and his blessing, along with a message that Nathan's job would be waiting when he returned. 3 times a day, Nathan cleaned Willa's wounds and applied fresh salve. He had given her his bed and made himself a pallet on the floor near the fire. He cooked simple meals of beans and cornbread, helped her eat when the pain made her hands shake too badly to hold a spoon. At night, when fever made her delirious, he sat beside her and placed cool cloths on her forehead, murmuring reassurances until she calmed. "You do not have to do this," she said on the 4th day, when she was finally able to sit up slightly. "You do not even know me." Nathan was stirring a pot of stew over the fire. He glanced back at her, and Willa was struck by how kind his eyes were, a warm brown that reminded her of honey in sunlight. He was handsome in a rugged way, she realized, with strong features and dark hair that curled slightly at his collar. Probably in his mid-20s, she guessed, with the weathered skin of a man who spent his life outdoors. "I know you did not deserve what happened to you," Nathan said simply. "That is all I need to know." Willa felt tears prick her eyes, but these were different from the ones she had shed in pain. "Thank you," she whispered. "I do not know how I will ever repay you. Nothing to repay." Nathan ladled stew into 2 bowls and brought one to her, helping her adjust pillows so she could sit up without putting pressure on her back. "Just focus on healing." But Frank Warren did come looking, just as Willa had predicted. It was a week after that terrible night, and Nathan was outside chopping firewood when he heard the shouting. Frank appeared at the end of the road with 2 other men, all of them drunk and angry. "Give me back my daughter." Frank roared, his face mottled with rage and bruising from where Nathan had hit him. Nathan set down his axe and walked forward, placing himself between the men and his cabin. "She is not your daughter, and she is not going anywhere with you. She belongs to me," Frank spat. "I am her legal guardian until she marries, and I say she is coming home. Over my dead body." One of Frank's friends, a weaselly man named Pete, sneered. "That can be arranged, Cowboy." Nathan's hand moved to his revolver, but he did not draw it. He did not want bloodshed if it could be avoided. 3 against 1. "You boys feeling brave today?" Before things could escalate further, the door to the cabin opened and Willa stepped out, wrapped in Nathan's coat. She still moved carefully, pain evident in every step, but her chin was raised defiantly. "I am not coming back, Frank." I am 19 years old, and by Nevada law, I can choose where I live. Frank's face went even redder. You ungrateful little witch. After everything I did for you. You mean after you beat me and burned me and tried to sell me to your friend like livestock? Willa's voice shook but held steady. I owe you nothing. If you come near me again, Nathan will not be the only one who knows what you did. I will tell everyone in this town. I will go to the sheriff. I will make sure everyone knows what kind of man you really are. The threat hung in the air like gunsmoke. Frank was known as mean, but his reputation in town was not entirely ruined yet. If word got out about what he had done, the decent folks in Rawhide would run him out, and he knew it. This is not over, Frank snarled, but he was already backing away, his friends following. You will regret this. Nathan watched them go, his body tense and ready for trouble, but they disappeared down the road. He turned to Willa, concern etched on his face. You should not be out of bed. I needed to face him. Willa swayed slightly, and Nathan was there in an instant, his arm around her waist, supporting her weight. The contact sent an unexpected warmth through both of them, something neither was quite ready to acknowledge. You are braver than any gunslinger I have ever met, Nathan said softly as he helped her back inside. As December gave way to January, Willa's burns began to heal, though Nathan warned her they would scar. She did not seem to care about that as much as he expected. They are proof I survived, she said one evening as he applied salve to her back, his touch now familiar and almost comforting. Proof that I am stronger than he tried to make me believe I was. Nathan paused, his hand resting gently between her shoulder blades. You are the strongest person I have ever met. Willa turned her head to look at him, and something passed between them, electric and undeniable. Nathan pulled his hand back quickly, suddenly aware of how intimate this routine had become, how much he looked forward to these moments of caring for her, of being near her. Nathan, Willa said softly, why did you really help me? The truth. He was quiet for a long moment, turning the tin of salve over in his hands. My mother, he finally said. My father was a hard man, not cruel like Frank, but hard. When he drank, he got rough with her. I was too young to stop it, too small. By the time I was big enough to stand up to him, she was already gone. Fever took her when I was 16, but I always wondered if the years of being worn down by him made her too tired to fight it. He looked up at Willa, his eyes intense. When I heard you scream, I heard my mother. I could not walk away. I would not. Willa reached out and took his hand, squeezing it gently. She would be proud of the man you became. Something shifted between them in that moment, an understanding that went deeper than gratitude or circumstance. Nathan found himself thinking about Willa constantly, not just about her injuries, but about her laugh when he said something amusing, about the way she hummed while she tried to help him cook, despite his protests that she should rest, about the determined set of her jaw when she practiced walking without wincing. For her part, Willa found herself watching Nathan when he did not know she was looking. The way his hands, so large and rough, could be impossibly gentle. The way he always made sure she ate before he did, that she had the warmest blankets, that the fire was stoked high on the coldest nights. No one had ever taken care of her like this, had ever made her feel safe and valued just for existing. By February, the worst of winter had settled over Rawhide, bringing snow that piled high against the cabin walls. Willa's burns had healed enough that she no longer needed daily treatments, but Nathan insisted on checking them every few days, worried about infection. The truth was, they had both grown so accustomed to each other's company that neither could imagine anything different. I should start thinking about finding work, Willa said one evening as they sat by the fire. I cannot live off your charity forever. It is not charity, Nathan said firmly. And there is no rush. The ranch work will pick up in spring. Jim said you could help Mary with the house and the cooking if you want. She is Jim's wife, and she has been after him to find her some help. Willa studied him carefully. You have thought about this a lot. I have thought about you a lot, Nathan admitted, then looked away, color rising in his cheeks. I mean about your situation, your future. Nathan. Willa waited until he looked at her. I have thought about you a lot too. The air between them felt charged, like the moment before lightning strikes. Nathan stood abruptly, running a hand through his hair. I should check on the horses. It is freezing outside and you just checked on them an hour ago. Willa stood too, moving toward him. Her back twinged, but the pain was manageable now, a dull ache rather than the searing agony it had been. Why are you running away from me? I am not running. Yes, you are. She stepped closer. Every time we get close to something real, you find a reason to leave the room or change the subject. Nathan turned to face her, conflict written all over his features. Willa, you have been through hell. You are vulnerable. The last thing you need is me taking advantage of that. Taking advantage. Willa's voice rose with frustration. Nathan, you saved my life. You have spent months taking care of me, asking nothing in return. You gave me your bed and slept on the floor. You have been nothing but honorable. Do you really think so little of me that I cannot know my own heart? I think you are confusing gratitude with something else. Do not tell me what I am feeling. Willa's eyes flashed with anger now. I am not some fragile thing that needs to be protected from her own emotions. Yes, you helped me when I was at my lowest, but I have watched you, Nathan Everett. I have seen your kindness, your strength, your gentleness. I have fallen in love with you, and that has nothing to do with gratitude and everything to do with who you are. The words hung in the air between them. Nathan stared at her, his chest rising and falling with rapid breaths. You love me. Yes, you stubborn man. Willa reached up and cupped his face in her hands. I love you. Nathan's control shattered. He pulled her into his arms, careful of her back, and kissed her with all the pent-up longing of the past 2 months. Willa melted against him, her arms wrapping around his neck, kissing him back with equal fervor. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Nathan pressed his forehead to hers. I love you too, he whispered. God help me. I have loved you since the moment I saw you trying to be brave through all that pain. I have loved you through every morning and every night, and I have been terrified to tell you because I did not want you to feel obligated or pressured or anything but completely free to choose your own path. Willa smiled, tears slipping down her cheeks. I choose you. I choose this. I choose us. They spent that night talking by the fire, wrapped in blankets, sharing stories of their lives. Nathan told her about growing up on a small farm in Missouri, about leaving home after his mother died because he could not stand to be near his father anymore, about drifting west and finding work on various ranches until he landed in Nevada. Willa told him about her childhood before her mother remarried, about her real father who had died when she was 12, a gentle man who had taught her to read and encouraged her love of learning. He would have liked you, Willa said, her head resting on Nathan's shoulder. He always said the measure of a man was not in his words, but in his actions when no one was watching. I wish I could have met him. Nathan pressed a kiss to the top of her head, to thank him for raising such an incredible daughter. As February turned to March, Nathan returned to work at the ranch, but he came home every evening to Willa. She had started helping Mary Taylor with cooking and mending, and the two women had become fast friends. Mary was a plump, cheerful woman in her 40s who took one look at how Nathan and Willa were with each other and started planning a wedding in her head. That boy is head over heels, Mary told Willa one afternoon as they kneaded bread dough in the ranch house kitchen. And you are just as bad. When are you two going to make it official? Willa blushed. We have only been courting a few weeks. Honey, you have been living together for months. I know Nathan is too much of a gentleman to have touched you before you were ready, but everyone in town knows you two are a match. Might as well make it proper before the gossips really get going. Willa bit her lip. Do you think he wants to marry me? Mary laughed. Child, that man looks at you like you hung the moon and stars. Of course he wants to marry you. But Nathan was thinking the same thing, worried that it was too soon, that Willa needed more time to be sure. He confided in Jim one day while they were mending fences on the south pasture. So ask her, Jim said simply, hammering a nail into a post. Worst she can say is she wants to wait. What if she says yes because she feels like she has to? Nathan voiced his deepest fear. She is living in my cabin, working for you because I arranged it. What if she feels trapped? Jim straightened up and fixed Nathan with a level stare. You really think that girl does anything she does not want to do? She faced down her abuser with burns still healing on her back. She told you she loved you first, if I recall Mary's version of events correctly. Willa Warren is not a woman who can be trapped or coerced. If she says yes, it will be because she wants to be your wife. Nathan thought about that for the rest of the day. That evening, instead of heading straight to the cabin, he stopped at the small general store in Rawhide and spent his carefully saved wages on a simple gold band. It was not much, but it was honest, bought with honest work, and he hoped it would be enough. He found Willa at the cabin, cooking dinner over the fire. She had taken to wearing her hair down around him, the blonde waves falling past her shoulders, and she looked up with a smile when he entered that made his heart skip. You are late, she said teasingly. I was about to send out a search party. I had an errand. Nathan closed the door and stood there awkwardly, the ring burning a hole in his pocket. He had faced down rustlers and outlaws without breaking a sweat, but asking this small woman to marry him had his palms sweating. Willa set down her spoon and turned to face him fully, her smile fading to concern. Nathan, what is wrong? You look pale. Nothing is wrong. Everything is right, actually, too right. That is the problem. He was making a mess of this. Nathan took a deep breath and tried again. Willa, I know we have not been courting long in the traditional sense, but I feel like I have known you my whole life. These past months with you have been the happiest I have ever been. You make me want to be a better man, to build something real and lasting. I know you have been through hell, and I know you are just getting your life back, and I do not want to pressure you into anything, but Nathan. Willa crossed the small space and took his hands. Breathe. He sucked in a breath, and then dropped to one knee right there on the rough wooden floor of the cabin. Willa Warren, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife? Willa's eyes filled with tears as Nathan pulled the ring from his pocket. It was simple but beautiful, the gold catching the firelight. Yes, she whispered. Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes. Nathan stood and slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into his arms and kissed her deeply. When they broke apart, both laughing and crying at the same time, Willa said, I was starting to think you would never ask. You were. Mary has been telling me for weeks that you were going to propose any day now. I was beginning to think she was wrong. Nathan laughed, a sound of pure joy. Everyone seems to have known what was in my heart before I had the courage to speak it. They married in early April, in a simple ceremony at the small church in Rawhide with Jim and Mary Taylor standing as witnesses. Willa wore a simple blue dress that Mary had helped her make, and Nathan wore his best shirt and vest. The preacher was an old man who had seen his share of hardship and recognized the genuine love between the young couple. When he pronounced them man and wife, Nathan kissed Willa so tenderly that Mary had to dab at her eyes with her handkerchief. The small gathering that came to the wedding included most of the hands from the Taylor ranch, and several townspeople who had come to know and respect Willa and Nathan. Frank Warren was not there, having left town 2 months prior after word of what he had done finally spread through Rawhide. The decent folks had made it clear he was not welcome, and he had slunk away in the night like the coward he was. That night, in the cabin that was now truly their home, Nathan carefully unlaced Willa's dress and slipped it from her shoulders. He had seen her scars many times while treating her burns, but this was different. This was his wife, and the marks on her back were part of her story, part of what had brought them together. "They are not pretty," Willa said softly, a hint of old insecurity in her voice. Nathan pressed gentle kisses along each scar. "They are part of you, and you are the most beautiful thing I have ever seen. These marks are proof of your strength, your survival. They are beautiful because you are beautiful." Willa turned in his arms and kissed him, and they consummated their marriage with a gentleness and passion that left them both breathless. Afterward, lying tangled together in their bed, Willa traced patterns on Nathan's chest and said, "I never thought I could be this happy." "Neither did I." Nathan pulled her closer. "We are going to build a good life together, Willa Everett. I promise you that." And they did. As spring turned to summer, Nathan continued his work at the Taylor Ranch while Willa helped Mary with the household tasks. But they were both saving money, dreaming of buying their own piece of land someday. Jim Taylor had promised to help them find a good plot when they were ready, somewhere with water and good grazing for cattle. In the evenings, they would sit on the small porch Nathan built onto the cabin and watch the sun set over the Nevada hills. Sometimes, Nathan would play a harmonica he had, filling the air with sweet melodies while Willa hummed along. Other times they would simply talk, sharing dreams and plans for the future. "I want children," Willa said one evening in July, her hand resting on Nathan's knee. "Is that something you want too?" Nathan covered her hand with his. "More than anything. I want to raise them right, the way my mother would have wanted, to show them that family means love and respect, not fear. You will be an amazing father." Willa leaned her head on his shoulder. Patient and kind and strong, by September, Willa discovered she was pregnant. She told Nathan one evening after dinner, watching nervously for his reaction. For a moment he just stared at her, and then a grin spread across his face so wide and joyful that Willa started laughing. "Really?" he asked, pulling her into his arms. "We are going to have a baby, really?" Willa wrapped her arms around his neck. "Are you happy?" "Happy," Nathan laughed and spun her around carefully. "I am the happiest man in Nevada, the happiest man in the whole damn country." The pregnancy progressed smoothly through the fall and winter. Mary Taylor fussed over Willa like a mother hen, making sure she did not overwork herself and feeding her endless amounts of food to keep her strength up. Nathan was even more protective, barely letting Willa lift anything heavier than a spoon. "I am pregnant, not made of porcelain," Willa protested one day when Nathan insisted on carrying a basket of laundry for her. "I know, but I am allowed to take care of my wife." Nathan kissed her forehead. "Especially when she is carrying our child." Willa smiled and let him fuss. The truth was, she loved how attentive he was, how he would rest his hand on her growing belly and talk to the baby, telling stories about the ranch and the horses, and how loved this child would be. Their son was born in late May of 1884, on a beautiful spring morning when the wildflowers were blooming across the hills. The labor was long and difficult, and Nathan paced outside the cabin while Mary attended to Willa inside. When he finally heard the baby's cry, he rushed in to find Willa exhausted but smiling, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in a soft blanket. "Meet your son," she said softly, tears of joy streaming down her face. Nathan knelt beside the bed and looked down at the small, red face of his child. The baby had a tuft of dark hair and was wailing lustily, his tiny fists waving in the air. "He is perfect," Nathan whispered, his voice choked with emotion. "You are perfect. Thank you, Willa. Thank you for this gift." They named him Thomas, after Willa's father, and he became the center of their world. Nathan had never known love like this, the fierce, protective love of a parent. He would sit for hours just watching Thomas sleep, marveling at his tiny fingers and toes. "I understand now," he told Willa one night as they stood over the cradle Nathan had built, "why my mother stayed as long as she did. When you love your child this much, you will endure anything to try to keep them safe." Willa squeezed his hand. "But you are not your father, Nathan. Thomas will never know fear in this house. Only love." As Thomas grew from infant to toddler, Nathan and Willa finally saved enough to buy their own small ranch, 20 acres with a creek running through it and a meadow perfect for grazing. Jim Taylor helped them negotiate a fair price and even sold them some starter cattle at a good rate. They built a small house, larger than the cabin but still modest, with a room for Thomas and space for the family they hoped to expand. Life was not always easy. The work was hard and the weather could be brutal. There were seasons when money was tight and they worried about making ends meet. But they had each other, and they had built something real and true together. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Nathan surprised Willa by taking her on a picnic to a spot overlooking their land. Thomas was spending the day with Mary and Jim, giving them rare time alone. As they sat on a blanket watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and pink, Nathan pulled Willa close. "You ever regret it?" he asked. "Marrying a cowboy with more dreams than money." Willa looked at him as if he had grown a second head. "Regret marrying the man who saved my life. The man who showed me what love really means. The man who gave me a son and a home and a future I never thought I could have." She cupped his face in her hands. "Nathan Everett, you are the best thing that ever happened to me. I would not change a single moment of our life together." Nathan kissed her deeply. "I love you, Willa, more today than yesterday, and I will love you even more tomorrow." "That is impossible," Willa teased. "There cannot be more love than what we already have. Want to bet?" Nathan grinned and kissed her again. 2 years later, in the spring of 1891, Willa gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Rose. Thomas, now 7, was instantly smitten with his baby sister and took his role as big brother very seriously. Nathan would often find him sitting beside the cradle, telling Rose stories about the ranch and the horses, just as Nathan had done with him. The years passed in a blur of hard work and happiness. They added more cattle to their herd, built a larger barn, and made improvements to the house. Thomas grew into a strong, kind young man who shared his father's love of horses and his mother's fierce sense of justice. Rose was a spitfire, stubborn and brave, who could ride almost before she could walk. On a warm evening in 1895, Nathan and Willa sat on their porch as they had done countless times before, watching their children play in the yard. Thomas was teaching Rose how to rope fence posts, both of them laughing when her lasso missed wildly. "Can you believe it has been 13 years since that night?" Willa said softly, her hand finding Nathan's. Nathan brought her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. 13 years since the night my life really began. I was so broken then." Willa looked down at their joined hands, at the gold band that had never left her finger. "I thought I would never be whole again." "You were never broken, Willa. You were wounded, but your spirit was always strong. You healed yourself. I just had the privilege of being there while you did." Willa leaned her head on his shoulder. "We healed each other. You gave me safety and love when I needed it most. But I like to think I gave you something too, a family, A purpose, a place to belong. You gave me everything, Nathan said simply. A reason to wake up every morning grateful to be alive. You and those children are my whole world. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sun sink lower on the horizon, painting everything in gold. Rose shrieked with delight as she finally managed to rope her target, and Thomas whooped his approval. The sound of their children's laughter was the sweetest music either parent could imagine. "Mama, Papa, did you see?" Rose came running up to the porch, her blonde braids flying behind her. "We saw, sweetheart." Willa pulled her daughter into her lap, despite Rose's protests that she was too big for such things at 6 years old. "You are becoming quite the cowgirl. I am going to be as good as Thomas someday," Rose declared with the absolute confidence of childhood. "You are going to be better," Thomas said, joining them on the porch. At 13, he was already nearly as tall as his father, with the same warm brown eyes and quiet strength. "You practice twice as hard as I ever did." Nathan ruffled his son's hair affectionately. "That is because she is trying to keep up with her big brother. You set a good example, son." As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, the family moved inside for dinner. The house was filled with warmth and laughter, the smell of Willa's cooking, and the easy comfort of people who knew they were loved without question. After the children were tucked into bed, Nathan and Willa stood together in the doorway of their bedroom, looking out at the land they had built together. "I never told you," Willa said suddenly, "but I think about that night sometimes. The worst night of my life that led to the best thing in my life. If I could go back and change it, erase those scars, I do not think I would, because it brought me to you." Nathan turned her to face him, his expression serious. "Those scars are not what brought us together, Willa. They were just the circumstance. Who you are, the woman you have always been, that is what I fell in love with. Your courage, your strength, your kindness despite everything you had been through. The scars are just marks on skin. They do not define you. But they are part of my story," Willa said. "Part of our story, and I have made my peace with that. Our story." Nathan smiled and pulled her close. "A love story that started in darkness and grew into light. A story about two people who found each other when they needed it most and built something beautiful together. A story that is far from over," Willa added, reaching up to kiss him. "We have many more chapters to write, you and I." And they did. Years continued to pass, filled with all the joys and challenges of life on a ranch in Nevada. There were hard winters and dry summers, times when money was scarce and times of plenty. There were moments of worry when Thomas broke his arm falling from a horse, when Rose came down with fever, and they sat up all night praying she would recover. But there were far more moments of joy, celebrations and milestones, watching their children grow into remarkable adults. Thomas eventually married a sweet girl named Emma from a neighboring ranch, and they gave Nathan and Willa 3 grandchildren who visited often, filling the house with noise and laughter. Rose grew into a woman as strong and independent as her mother, eventually marrying a kind man she met in town, a schoolteacher who supported her dream of opening a small shop in Rawhide selling her hand-sewn goods. Through it all, Nathan and Willa remained each other's anchor, their love deepening with each passing year. They still sat on their porch in the evenings, though both moved a little slower now, gray threading through Nathan's dark hair and Willa's blonde. Their hands were more weathered, marked by years of hard work, but they still fit together perfectly, fingers intertwined. "Do you remember what you said to me that first night?" Willa asked one evening when they were in their 50s, watching another sunset. "When I asked you to let me die." "I said not a chance." Nathan squeezed her hand, "and I meant it. Every day since then I have been grateful that I walked past your house at that exact moment. Fate, Willa mused, or providence, or just dumb luck, whatever it was, I am grateful for it too. Nathan turned to look at his wife, seeing not the scars that still marked her back or the lines that time had etched on her face, but the girl who had been brave enough to face down her abuser. The woman who had taken a chance on loving a simple cowboy. The mother who had raised their children with endless patience and wisdom. The partner who had stood beside him through every triumph and setback. "I love you, Willa Everett," he said, just as he had said countless times before. "More than I have words to express." "I love you too, Nathan." Willa leaned into him, her head resting on his shoulder in a gesture so familiar it felt like coming home. "More than yesterday, and I will love you even more tomorrow." They laughed together at the echo of words spoken long ago, promises that had been kept and renewed with each passing day. As darkness fell and stars scattered across the Nevada sky, they sat together in perfect contentment, two souls who had found each other in the darkness and built a life filled with light. Their story, which had begun with pain and violence, had transformed into something beautiful beyond measure. It was a testament to the healing power of love, to the strength that comes from choosing kindness over cruelty, hope over despair. Nathan had spent that long winter treating Willa's burns, but they had spent a lifetime healing each other's souls, building a love that would endure long after they were gone, passed down through their children and grandchildren, a legacy of what two people could create when they refused to let darkness have the final word. And on quiet evenings, when Thomas visited with his family or Rose stopped by with her husband, they would sit around the dinner table and someone would inevitably ask how Nathan and Willa met. The story would be told again, softened slightly for younger ears but never shying away from the truth. Because it was important, they believed, for their family to know that love could bloom even in the harshest circumstances, that one person's choice to help another could change the course of multiple lives, that healing was always possible with patience and care and devotion. "Your grandfather heard my scream and came running," Willa would tell her grandchildren, her hand always finding Nathan's as she spoke. "He did not know me. He did not owe me anything, but he chose to help anyway. He spent that entire winter treating my burns, and in the process, he healed my heart too. And your grandmother taught me what real strength looks like," Nathan would add. "She had every reason to give up, to let bitterness consume her, but she chose differently. She chose to heal, to forgive, to build something new. She is the bravest person I have ever known." The grandchildren would listen with wide eyes, young Thomas Jr. and little Emma and all the others who came after, and they would learn that love was not just romance and passion, though Nathan and Willa had plenty of both even in their later years. Love was also choice and commitment and showing up day after day, even when it was hard. It was treating someone's wounds with gentle hands, both physical and emotional. It was building a life together one day at a time, with patience and faith and an unwavering belief in each other. As Nathan and Willa grew older still, their ranch passed to Thomas to manage, though they still lived in the house they had built together. Their children and grandchildren visited often, the house always full of life and love. And every anniversary, without fail, Nathan would take Willa back to that spot overlooking their land, where they would sit together and remember all the years that had brought them to this moment. 40 years, Willa said on their 40th anniversary, in 1924. They were both in their 60s now, faces lined with age but eyes still bright when they looked at each other. 40 years since you asked me to marry you. Best decision I ever made, Nathan said, his voice a little rougher with age but no less sincere. Well, second best. The best was kicking down that door and refusing to walk away. My hero. Willa smiled and kissed him softly. Then, now, and always. They sat together as the sun set one more time, painting the sky in colors that never seemed to fade in beauty no matter how many times they witnessed it. Their hands were clasped together, aged and weathered but strong, a physical manifestation of the bond that had held them together through 4 decades of life. "Thank you," Willa said softly, "for everything, for saving me, for loving me, for giving me this beautiful life." "Thank you," Nathan echoed, "for letting me, for choosing me, for making every day an adventure worth waking up for." As the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, they rose slowly and walked back to their house, their home, surrounded by the land they had worked and the family they had created. Inside, laughter echoed from where their grandchildren were playing, and the smell of dinner cooking filled the air. It was ordinary and perfect, exactly the kind of life they had dreamed of building all those years ago. That night, lying in bed with Willa curled against him just as she had done for 40 years, Nathan pressed a kiss to her forehead and whispered, "I would do it all again. Every single moment." "Me too," Willa whispered back. "I would choose you every time in every lifetime." And so their story continued, a love that had begun in pain and blossomed into joy, a testament to the power of compassion and the strength of the human spirit. Nathan had treated Willa's burns through that long winter of 1882, but their love had healed them both in ways that went far deeper than skin. Together, they had built a legacy that would outlive them both, a family rooted in love and respect, a ranch that would provide for generations to come, and most importantly, a story that proved that even in the darkest moments, light could break through if you were brave enough to reach for it. Their days were filled with simple pleasures now, grandchildren running through the house, quiet mornings with coffee on the porch, evenings filled with stories and laughter. And though their bodies grew frailer with each passing year, their love remained as strong as ever, a constant in a changing world, an anchor that held steady through every storm. This was the life they had built together, one act of kindness at a time, one day at a time, one moment of choosing love over fear. From that terrible December night to these peaceful autumn days, they had walked together, hand in hand, proving that the most powerful force in the world was not violence or cruelty, but the simple, profound act of one person choosing to care for another. And in the end, that was all that really mattered. That they had loved each other well, raised their children with kindness, and left the world a little better than they found it. That Nathan had heard Willa's scream and chosen to help. That Willa had chosen to heal and to love again despite every reason not to. That together, they had created something beautiful and lasting out of pain and darkness. Their story was complete, a circle closed, a promise kept. And if you listened carefully on quiet Nevada evenings, you could almost hear the echo of their love in the wind that whispered through the valley, in the laughter of their descendants who still worked the land, in the enduring proof that love, real love, can conquer even the darkest of nights.